7 prime ministers in 10 years. At this rate, Downing Street should be let on a rolling periodic tenancy.
No fixed term, one occupant change a year. That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Welcome back to the Essential Property Podcast. I'm Paul Samuda.
And I'm Amanda Woodward. And this week, everything changed because Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, the man they call the King of the North, is now the Prime Minister.
And here's why that matters to every landlord listening. For the first time in a very, very long time, we have a Prime Minister whose signature policy record is a private rented sector. He spent 9 years practicing on landlords in Manchester, and now he's got the whole country to play with.
So today, let's talk about what he did in Manchester, what his new cabinet tells us. The big one, the suggestion of scrapping stamp duty and council tax for a new land tax. And most importantly, how landlords can position themselves now to minimise the risk.
Plus, a bit later, something we're genuinely excited about, our brand new property training AI for first-time investors. Stay tuned. It just crossed my mind, Amanda. Didn't we say last time this was the last one with the last political type podcast?
We did. And I remember you saying that, thinking, let's just give it a rest on the whole politics side of things. And then what do you know? a brand new update, which we can't ignore. So here we are.
And I think this is the environment we're in, where politics just trumps everything, unintended.
Well, I think, didn't Trump welcome Andy Burnham into power by saying that Britain is currently a poverty-stricken disaster?
I'm not going to give my response on there for fear that the FBI will start knocking on our doors. But, isn't that a typical Mr. Trump statement? Anyway, I'm handing you the microphone for this one. Who exactly have we just got into power?
Okay, so for those that maybe don't follow politics too closely, and for some of our international listeners, so Andy Burnham, a 56-year-old man, he's a career politician turned mayor, now turned prime minister. And he was a cabinet minister under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. He tried twice to lead the Labour Party and lost. And then he left Westminster to become the Mayor of Greater Manchester in 2017. He came back to Parliament a few weeks ago. He then won the leadership without a single opponent.
So basically, he was unopposed. So nobody voted for this. In terms of the public, nobody voted for this.
Well, not the public, no, because that's how the system works. The governing party can change its leader mid-term and the new leader becomes the PM. So Starmer stepped down after a rough run. Burnham got 379 nominations from Labour MPs, and then the King asked him to form a government. Job done.
Amazing. So what's he actually promised?
Big words from day one. He called himself a circuit breaker for Britain. He wants to put forward a new political model, a new economic model. He's got a 10-year plan. He's promised very boldly to end rough sleeping. He's already been talked about as a more radical and more interventionist than Starmer ever was.
I'll tell you a secret, most politicians can't count to 10. The most they can count to is 5, which is the term of their governance. Intervention, that's the word landlords need to sit up at, I think.
It is, because here's the fact for our audience. Burnham's actually a landlord himself. He does own rental property. So he knows the game from the inside, but that kind of cuts both ways, really.
I actually didn't know that. I didn't know he was a landlord. Mm. So has he done the right to rent check on himself before entering number 10?
I don't know about that, right to rent check, maybe a fit for purpose.
Indeed. I mean, the King of the North does make me smile. You know what that's from? Game of Thrones.
I know, your favourite show.
Yeah, what was his name? What was the King of the North? What was his name?
Oh, you've got me now.
Every woman on the planet fancied him.
Yeah, come back to it. Oh, Jon Snow.
Jon Snow, King of the North, Jon Snow.
Jon Snow, King of the North. Maybe that'll be our code name for Andy Burnham, Jon Snow.
Yeah, indeed.
But look, I mean, you've said Burnham's Manchester record is the closest thing that we've got to a crystal ball. So what happens in the past may happen in the future. So how do you think that's going to take shape?
Just forget the sound bites. Look at what he actually did with limited powers, because he told us he wants to go further nationally, which feels a little bit dangerous to me. Mm-hmm. But sort of the 5 standout things that I picked up. The first one was the Good Landlord Charter. His flagship, a voluntary charter for landlords and agents. Sign up, commit to standards above the legal minimum, and you get recognized as a good landlord. It now covers roughly half of the rented homes in Greater Manchester, with over 100 landlords and providers signed up.
Okay. So voluntary sounds fairly harmless.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the tell. He said publicly that landlords who choose not to join will stand out more clearly, whatever that means. And that he doesn't believe they should have the freedom to keep renting out poor homes. I think that's reasonable. Translation, voluntary today, expected tomorrow, mandatory the day after. I think you can think of it as a national landlord register with teeth.
Yeah.
And, there was a little bit of a carrot, sort of real money for real landlords. And to be fair, charter landlords could access grants of up to £30,000 for energy efficiency and retrofit works. And that's serious money for EPC upgrades. Whether that will translate to the same nationally, I don't know.
Okay, so the professional and the compliant landlord, did they actually do well out of that in Manchester? If you became sort of a good landlord?
That's the lesson. His whole model is carrot and stick. Good landlords got funded, which brings us up to the stick part of it. He recruited a dedicated enforcement team to go after poor housing. Fines against landlords rose some 43%, totaling around, I think it was £4.7 million. And the money was reinvested into tenant protection. He also funded legal support to help tenants' rights, unlawful evictions, and rent hikes.
So the stick wasn't just for show then, he actually did deliver through on it.
Yeah, this is the leaked document bit. The things he asked for, but didn't have the power to do. He wrote to government asking for rent control powers in Manchester. He called for compulsory purchase powers so councils can take substandard rentals off landlords. His phrase was 3 warnings and you're out. He backed a mandatory landlord register and independent inspections of rented homes. And several of the things he called for in 2023, guess what? Ended up inside the Renters' Rights Act.
Yeah. So perhaps a little bit more influential than we actually quite thought. And now he doesn't even need to write to the government because he is the government.
Yeah, that's the whole episode in one sentence, I think. I think the fifth one is, he believes in the housing first finish model philosophy, big council house building and poor's right to buy a new council homes in pressured areas. More social housing over time means more competition at the bottom end of the private rented sector.
Okay, so just sum up for our listeners in plain English, the lessons we've learned from Manchester.
I think simply, if you're a compliant professional landlord with decent stock, Burnham's words can actually work for you. Grants, recognition, less competition from the cowboys. If you're under-compliant, over-leveraged, and hoping nobody looks, somebody's now definitely going to look.
That makes sense. Which, it doesn't really sound too bad because we like to think that we're all operating as professional, compliant landlords. I think the 3 warnings and you're out. It's like, are you running a country or are you running like a 5-a-side football team? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a bit kind of like, I'm in control, I've got the power, you do what I say. And I think that when that sort of rhetoric is imposed on businesses, it does worry me a little.
Yeah, I think in reality, I mean, in the US, they call it 3 strikes and you're out. And this was, if you got caught by the police 3 times, then you're going to jail. And this is sort of reminiscent of that almost. But the reality is, if you think about the way local authorities work, they tend to give warnings before they jump all over you. 7 days to do this, 14 days to do this, 21 days to do this. And eventually, if you don't do it, then they have the power to actually do the work themselves and rebuild you. So it's actually no different to the way it was before, but it just feels that this has teeth. And we've seen some of the fines floating about that local council have now placed upon landlords and agents. So this one is serious. This one is slap on the wrist. This is proper money, which if you're a compliant landlord, you've got nothing to worry about. If you've tried to slip between the gaps and been a bit underhanded, then I think you should be concerned.
Yeah. And I think if we look at what we were experiencing ourselves in the local authority areas, my recent experience has been a feeling of guilty until proven innocent rather than the other way around. Show me this, show me that, send me this, send me that, believing in that particular example, a tenant who was creating stories rather than maybe remaining impartial. They will probably say that they were remaining impartial. I know how I felt, and it certainly was prove your innocence rather than the other way around. And I think if that becomes the sentiment and becomes the sort of the way that the Burnham sort of strategy trickles down to local authority, I think that's when things can get a little bit unsettling for landlords.
Yeah, and I think it could do. Power corrupts and more power corrupts more. And that corruption just could be just flexing your muscle. I'm not talking about corruption in terms of bribe, just flexing your muscle. And just say it's a little bit like, back in the day, I'm sure it's the same today when you go to a nightclub and you've got this bouncer on the front door who this is a part-time job. And he felt strong and tough and so I'm not gonna let you in because I don't like the shoes you're wearing. Bugger off.
Yeah.
And I think it could get like that.
Power, isn't it? Power can go to people's heads a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope it doesn't get like that. So not in the areas that we operate. I think the areas we operate, we've got reasonable HMO officers sometimes. We don't agree with them all the time, but I think on balance they have been very reasonable. But anyway, we digress. Let's move on.
Yeah, okay. So let's talk about the cabinet. Andy Burnham's still forming his cabinet at the point of recording this call, but we do have a few announcements already. I will name who's coming in, Paul, and you tell us a little bit about the person. So first one, big one, new Chancellor of the Exchequer, John Healey.
Very surprised big. Nobody had that on their bingo card. Rachel Reeves is out. I can hear the tears. Rachel Reeves is out. He is a former housing minister. So the man holding the nation's checkbook knows housing inside out. And he's had some experiences there. He resigned a few weeks ago from being defense minister. He disagreed with Starmer on defense. There was talk that he's quite far left and quite radical, but radical in a professional way, if that makes sense. He's not sort of lost the plot type radical. But from what I understand, the city like him. He's come out and said some reassuring things in terms of fiscal discipline, as they call it. So they've got this bond vigilante, which keeps an eye on the government and says, you say anything stupid, we're going to run down the value of the pound and run up the cost of money. So I think not a bad pick, surprising, but not a bad pick.
Yeah. And then Housing Secretary. Oh my gosh, she's back. She's back. Miss Angela Rayner is back.
Angie's back. Angie's back. It wasn't that from EastEnders. Angie's back. Round 2, she drove the Renters' Right Act for the first time round, left the government, but in the meantime was cleared by HMRC over the stamp duty round. Of course she was. Yeah. And now she's back in the same chair. So I suspect she's asked to go back, a job that she didn't finish. I hope she hasn't come back with knuckle dusters. To be fair, people in the property sector said that she did a half decent job. She got things through on planning and changed the sentiment a lot quicker and more than any previous person holding that position. So I think to be practical, you've got to expect the renters' agenda to speed up and probably not slow down.
Yeah.
Right, your turn. First Secretary of State, Louise Haigh.
So she's basically Burnham's sort of right-hand woman. She's effectively his deputy in all but title. She's part of the sort of Northern interventionist inner circle. So Burnham's inner circle in, and the loyal Starmer team, Reeves, David Lammy, which was a bit of a surprise, Reid, Kyle, all out, all swept out in a day, gone.
Wow. So putting the pieces together, a housing literate chancellor, a returning renters' right champion, and a PM whose pet subject is PRS, the private rented sector. Housing policy just went back from back office to the boardroom.
Yeah, I know. And I think that's just what worries me a little bit, that it's like the industry is so firmly on their agenda, not just trying to just improve it a little bit. It's like in their hands. And I guess that's where we feel just that little bit vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, on Rayner returning, even the cabinet's on a rolling periodic tenancy now. You leave, you come back, no fixed term. You can't make this stuff up.
Let's move on to the land tax. It's been spoken widely about in the media. We don't know exactly what's coming. But let's talk a little bit about that. So I'm putting my first time buyer hat on, Paul. Okay. Pretend that I know very little about stamp duty, land tax, buying property. I'm going to act as the first time buyer. All right. So what is this land tax that everyone's talking about?
First off, there is no such thing as a land tax per se. It's been mooted, it's been discussed, but nothing's been put forward. And it's quite a major overhaul. But today, we pay two big property taxes: stamp duty, a one-off tax when you buy a property or buy a home, and council tax, a yearly bill based on what your home was worth in, wait for it, 1991. Yep, 1991, baggy jeans period, Brian Adams at number one. And that's still the year your council tax is based on. So that sounds a bit crazy, but
Yeah, that does seem mad.
it is mad. And Burnham agrees. He called council tax a highly regressive tax, meaning it hits ordinary homes harder than mansion owners, which I think most people say that's unfair. And he said, his quote was, he's long been persuaded of the argument for a land value tax. He'd love stamp duty to be gone too. He's called it a tax on young people's aspirations.
Okay, so what replaces them then?
The model his team is reported to be looking at comes from a campaign called Fairer Share, which even the name makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, but let's go with it. Scrap stamp duty and council tax completely. Replace them with one simple annual charge of just under 0.5%, 0.48%. I don't know where this 0.48 comes from, but 0.4% of your property's value every year. A pure land value tax is a cousin of this. You'd be taxed on the land your home sits on rather than the bricks. Either way, no tax to move. A yearly bill based on today's values instead.
Right, okay. So let's just digest that for a minute. So give me some examples, some real numbers.
So at 0.4%, a £250,000 home pays about £1,200 a year. A typical Newcastle home, around £860, Manchester about £1,300, London nearly £2,700. But that's not for landlords. Here's the landlord bit. Second homes, empty homes, overseas owned properties would pay double. They'd pay almost 1%, 0.96.
Whoa. Hang on, double?
Yeah, just hold that thought for a minute. And that's the part B. So no stamp duty means buying your next property gets dramatically cheaper, right? That's got to be a big tick. On a 300,000 buy-to-let today, you're paying tens of thousands in stamp duty, including the surcharge. Under this model, nothing up front, portfolio growth gets cheaper and faster. In theory, transactions unlock, people move more, stock comes to market, deals flow. Great for active investors, flippers, and anyone trading up. And if you remember, we stopped flipping properties when all that extra stamp duty came in.
Yeah.
Not on purpose, but there was just a little bit of a disincentive. It just affected the margin, if you remember. It's a leveling up tax by design. Cheaper homes in the North and the Midlands, Stoke, Crewe, Burton, Newcastle on the line, pay less than the Southeast. The claim is 75% of households would pay less. Don't believe government stats, but that's what they say. If your portfolio is northern and modestly priced, the maths may generally be in our favor. So that was the good stuff. The bad part is that it's annual. Ongoing cost with no exit. Stamp duty you pay once and forget. This bill arrives every year, forever, on every property you hold. As values rise, so does the tax. One analyst put it well. House price growth becomes an ongoing tax liability. Your capital growth literally sends you a bill. Now, just let that set in. The capital growth, the tax on that is normally paid when you sell. They're taxing you as you hold.
Yeah. And when you sell.
And when you sell, absolutely. So who pays on a rented home, landlord or tenant? If it lands on the owner, which is obviously the direction of travel, that's a new annual line on every property in your cash flow forecast. and you may not be able to pass it all on in rent, especially if rent measures are being tightened. And then lastly, the ugly bit, the 0.96% question. If rental properties get classified with second homes at double the rate, a 10 property portfolio averaging £150,000 a unit faces roughly £14,500 a year in new tax every year. That single classification decision is the difference between mildly annoying and restructuring everything. Nobody knows the answer yet, so we're watching it like a hawk. I'm just thinking about that. If you're an HMO landlord, you're thinking, I pay the council tax anyway. But if you're a buy-to-let landlord, I remember the guy you spoke to who had something like 800 properties. I sat next to a lawyer whose clients had 16,000 properties. If they're all buy-to-let properties, there's pretty heavy going.
Yeah.
Asset-rich, cash-poor landlords get squeezed. Own outright, live off modest rent, sit on an appreciated asset, ? Your tax bill will just become linked to your paper wealth, not actually income. There's bound to be some sort of transition chaos if they go ahead with this. But you've got to think, what about someone who paid full stamp duty last year and now starts paying annually also?
That's a really good point.
Yeah, revaluations, appeals, cliff edges. One agent summed up the fear. The principally sound, the execution could be an absolute catastrophe.
So let's just have a reality check on this. Is this rumor or is this thing actually going to be?
No, I think that's the point. No detailed proposal has been published. This is the direction of travel, not legislation. You don't panic sell on direction of travel, you position.
Yeah.
And, the government are very good at trickling bits of information out. And what they're doing is that they're doing a little bit of research. They're doing research to get the feedback, or they're giving you a heads up as to what's coming. And people talk about it enough, so it just becomes, yeah, okay, fine, it's coming, so we just need to make changes. So governments are very good at that. The other thing is that our tax system in this country is the most complicated tax system on the planet. No other country has a more complicated tax system. I can't remember the number of pages, but it went to something like 20,000 pages of tax legislation.
Yeah.
So this is supposed to be a way of simplifying this.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, I'm sure everyone's thinking this, and there's always going to be those kind of like edge cases, I guess I would call them. But what about the pensioner who's living in a property that they've lived in their whole entire life that happens to be on the outskirts of London, that might be £1.5 million, but who is literally a pensioner? Suggestions of this change mean that people might actually have to sell and not live in the house they were thinking of retiring in. Now, I understand the point that, tax needs to be fairer and broader shoulders need to take a little bit more. I can buy into that. But when you're changing people's way of life, this maybe perhaps poor little old lady has now got to sell her home and move somewhere else to live. I don't think that's fair. So it'll be interesting to see how they structure this in terms of the inclusions and perhaps some exclusions.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting going forward. I don't think it's going to happen overnight either. It's going to take quite a long run up. I mean, this government has 3 years to run. He'll probably call an election sometime this year. If the tea leaves suggest it's a good time to do that. So watch this space.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do landlords position themselves for something like this, if it possibly happened? So if I give sort of a summary of everything so far, the weather's changing, but it's not a storm unless you're unprepared. So I made a list of 7 sort of quick fire things. The first one was get compliant before compliance comes to you. Gas, electric, licensing, deposit, Renters' Rights Act rules. They all went live 1st of May. Under Burnham, enforcement is a certainty, not maybe, a certainty. In Manchester, 43% fine increase is the preview.
Yeah.
Secondly, fix EPC weak spots and chase the money while it lasts. Burnham's own model pays charter standard landlords for retrofit. If that happens for the UK, I mean, that would be great. Expect a national version of carrot and stick, but be the landlord holding the carrot. Join the badge schemes, wherever National Good Landlord scheme ends up looking like. Early joiners set the standard and get the goodwill. Stress test your cash flow with a new annual tax line. Run every property at plus 0.5% and plus 1% of value per year. If a property only works with zero property tax and endless rent rises, you found your weak link before the tax man. And something just came into mind. And there's a bunch of landlords who are renting to social housing. Do they get an exemption? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Lots of interesting scenarios. The fifth one I scribbled down was rethink timing on purchases and sales. If stamp duty days are outnumbered, big incoming purchase costs may look completely different in 2 years' time. And nobody can time policy, but factor it into any buy now or wait decision. And don't pay tomorrow's premium for yesterday's tax rules. Watch rent control signals like a hawk. He asked for those powers as mayor of Manchester and was refused. He can now grant them, possible to regional mayors first. He loves the devolution. If you're in a mayoral city region and you're in the front row, you're rubbing your hands getting excited at this. And lastly, my last note was professionalize or exit. The middle disappears, which is always the case. Every force in this episode, enforcement, standards, taxation, squeezes the casual, accidental, under-compliant landlord. When they sell up, supply tightens and quality operators win. And that this has been the government strategy all along, to squeeze out the dross, only operate with those that want to operate with a corporate structure and have high standards. And we said it in a previous episode, I think it was episode 54, and it's doubly true today. Uncertainty creates exits, and exits create opportunities for the prepared.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, professionalize or exit. But that does sort of beg the question in terms of sort of how, because might be some people that do need to be a lot more professional, but perhaps don't exactly know what to do or who to work with, and perhaps see it as quite expensive to do so. So up next, we're going to be answering that question in terms of how we have professionalized in our own business. We've been using AI to sort of transform and professionalize what we do here. And I think there's learnings there for everyone, whether you're just a one property landlord or whether you're a portfolio landlord. We do believe that AI will protect landlords, will help them provide a better service, will ultimately help them to be more profitable and stay away from the fines and the enforcement. But before we get to the close, there's an obvious question hanging over everything that we've just said. In this Burnham era, which does mean more compliance, more inspections, more enforcements, how does any landlord actually keep up with that without drowning in the admin?
That word drowning is not hyperbole. This is it feels like sometimes. And we can only tell you what we've done. About 18 months ago, we made a decision at Essential Management. Rather than hire our way out of the compliance matter, we'll build our way out. And we've been sort of quietly building our own suite of AI agents that now run alongside the team day to day across hundreds of rooms and units.
So just give people a flavour in terms of when you say AI agents. What does that actually look like today on a Thursday morning? What are the AI agents actually doing autonomously?
3 quick examples. Let's say our compliance agent, which we call him Reggie, reviews our portfolio against housing, health and safety standards on an ongoing basis. He surfaces a bunch of cases for the team to look at, not because we're a bad operator, but because the team just can't catch everything across that much stock. And that's the kind of thing sort of a Manchester style enforcement team will be looking at, but nationally. Second, maintenance. We retired our off-the-shelf system. We'd been logging a whole bunch of jobs over a very, very long time. And we replaced it with our own maintenance hub. We call that Mabel. It's built around the way we actually work. And then the third thing are tenant comms. An agent called Stan who handles all the routine communication. So our people, our team, can do really important things, and the high priority communication, they can jump in and take over.
Okay. So why are we telling our listeners about the AI agents? Because it's not exactly like we're selling them.
No, we're not, and deliberately so. We've had letting agents and portfolio landlords asking about it for months, and we've held back because we won't be putting anything in front of people until it's polished. But the point of saying it out loud is in this particular episode is that the Burnham rewards, evidence compliance, documented standards, professional operations. And this is what this technology does. It makes it affordable for operators of our size. You don't need a corporate back office anymore. You just need the right systems.
Yeah. So if someone's listening who is a landlord or an agent thinking, I want to start this AI agent journey, but don't know where to start, what should we say?
And let's have a conversation. I mean, we're open to conversations with landlords and agents, and we can probably assist with the development. What to automate first, what to avoid, what the compliance first version may look like. No pitch, no obligation, sort of inquiries through the show notes or the Essential Management website, and we'll happily have that conversation. And we've made a bunch of mistakes on this journey. So I think our job when we speak to people is to make sure that you don't make the same mistakes that we did.
And I'll say this whilst I've got the microphone, because Paul says I shouldn't talk about it. But I have actually written a book on all this. It's called Property and AI. I've documented the journey and everything that we've learned.
She has, and here's the awkward bit. It's currently sitting on my desk, unsigned, because it's good. Too good. There are things in there I'd quite like to stay inside the building just that little bit longer.
He calls it a sign off. I think, you're holding me hostage on this because it's something that we've written together, but Paul just wants to, make sure that I'm not giving away all the secrets at this stage. So
I promise it will see the light of day once we've agreed which secrets stay secret. So consider this your early warning. The book Paul tried to stop is coming. Watch this space.
And now I know it's coming, I'll start talking about it even more. But just to mention what you said there about Reggie. Reggie, obviously, his namesake, he's the regulations guy or the regulations AI agent. As soon as we set him live, he found a whole bunch of issues. And there's stuff that AI agents can find that humans can find, but takes a long time. Where an AI agent can do it in a matter of seconds rather than perhaps you could do a week-long audit, compliance audit, or you could deploy Reggie for an hour. I mean, that's game-changing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about something that is signed off, that Paul's not gatekeeping, which I have only spoken about on social media in the last few weeks, which is a website called propertytraining.ai. And for those of you who don't know, it's a AI-based property training platform. So let's talk about the person who wants to buy their first property. We're not talking about AI agents now or anyone that's been in property for a decade. We're talking about someone who's looking to do their first property investment. Okay, so that's sort of like the professional end of the market sorted, the professional landlords, the portfolio landlords. But there's one more group that this episode lands quite hard on. That's the person who are looking to buy their first rental property, who doesn't have AI agents or a decade of scars.
Yeah, exactly. Everything in this episode, compliance, standards, tax planning, hits the newcomer the hardest because they don't know what they don't know.
No. And the traditional answer to that is either to spend thousands of pounds on a weekend course in a hotel or be upsold to sort of a £10,000 membership or mastermind before you've even bought your first property.
Which is exactly why we built Property Training AI. Everything a new investor needs to buy their first property properly. Sourcing, finance, compliance, managing without spending thousands on a course.
Yeah. So we've effectively created a low cost but high value product with no upsells. That's not just a marketing line. That's the whole point of the product.
Okay. In a Burnham market, the gap between knowing the rules and guessing them is about to get really expensive. For £100, that's going to close the gap. The links are going to be in the show notes, and any inquiries, you know where to find us.
Okay, I think it's probably time to wrap up this episode here. So let's just go through 3 takeaways. 1, Burnham's Manchester record is basically his manifesto. So a carrot for good landlords and a big stick for the bad ones.
2, the property tax debate is real, but it's a direction of travel, not law. Position, don't panic. Stress test, get compliant. Chase the grants when they become available.
And 3, every change like this clears out the unprepared and it rewards the professionals. It's just about trying to work out what side of that line you're going to be on.
We'll be tracking every housing announcement out of this new government, so make sure you subscribe and don't miss it. I'm Paul Samuda.
I'm Amanda Woodward.
And this has been the Essential Property Podcast. Don't make decisions based on fear, make them based on thinking.
Right.